Hi, this is Dr. Duncan. I thought I would just take a few minutes and take what I talked about in conflict analysis in that lecture and take a few minutes and talk with you like I would in class about how we would look at everyday use. So you've had a couple days. I know it's really quick. You need to read the story here, and this is the PDF that I have attached. This has been a favorite story that students have enjoyed, and I think you'll get a lot more out of it than you think initially, but read it through. And then the first way we look at a story, besides just, the basic comprehension of what happened, is at the college level, we start analyzing, and that means breaking it down into its parts and thinking about it, about what happened and why and how this works and how it was put together. And so the first way we do that is looking at the conflict. So it's usually pretty easy, but sometimes it can be a little complicated to pick out who is the protagonist, that's our first word, and who's the antagonist. And I have the picture of the deer here because it's a battle. There's a conflict means that there is a clash. Again, that's life, and fiction is a picture of life. But these conflicts in these fiction stories have a deeper meaning. We're supposed to learn something from it. And they can take place between characters. Typically they do. Sometimes it's between a character and outside forces like it was in Snow. But we'll just stick to everyday use right now. So you have a main character. Sometimes they're like a hero, not always, and then there's an antagonist that resists. In everyday use, students sometimes disagree whether it's Mama that's the protagonist or D, the protagonist. I think a helpful hint on this is who is at the center of the story from start to finish, and then who enters the story and creates the problem. And I think when you look at it that way, it becomes clearer that, and then who wins, right? Who kind of basically wins the battle. So that should be a really good tip off as to who's involved. Some students engage Maggie, and you just got to in this, and you just have to stop and go look at the story again. Did she resist anybody? Okay, or did she cave in? Is she the winner? Did she? So she doesn't really fit in those categories. You can't really place her into that. When we look at kinds of conflict, this just helps us identify characters with characters, which is what we primarily have, at least in the surface plot story of everyday use, is called man versus man or person versus person, if you want to go genderless. I have some examples from Star Wars. I just thought that would be fun. Sometimes there are multiple levels of a conflict that the person versus person, these characters take on a kind of a symbolic value. They mean something, they stand for other things. And that's something that can be happening here a little bit with this story, that Mama and Maggie stand on one perspective about something, hint, hint, the importance of where they came from and their heritage and those kind of old values. And Dee comes in with different social values, a different perspective, and values the items in the house, but for a different reason. And so even though it plays out in the characters, those characters can represent ideas that are in the bigger picture, like in out in society. And so that would be another, layer to the conflict. Underneath, you could probably say there's always some sort of internal struggle that's going on. So like while Luke Skywalker in Star Wars is typically his external conflicts are primarily with Darth Vader. Darth Vader, of course, is the epitome and representative of the evil empire. And only that until he finds out, of course, that's his biological father. And all going along, this is the layers here, that Luke is battling with his fear and his anger while he is in conflict with Darth Vader and the evil empire. So there are multiple layers of that, but the plot story is typically played out with, him and Darth Vader, but there's just layers. So that's what we're looking for here. And then a good man versus nature is because he's in conflict with the evil empire. And so he ends up on this planet called Hoth in a snowstorm. And for that period of the plot, that particular part of the storyline, he's not, having a lightsaber duel with Darth Vader. He's not even fighting the evil empire. Right now, he's fighting the snowstorm to survive. So the conflicts can shift, even though the protagonist may stay the same. Luke Skywalker is our hero, our protagonist, and Darth Vader is always his antagonist, and the evil empire is always an antagonist. Other things can come up along the way. So think about that. I will just go ahead and tell you there's no real true nature conflict in everyday use. There was a past one that they talk about, and don't get that confused with what's happening presently in the story that you have. There was a past conflict because of the fire and the house burning down, but that's in the past. It does play in, but it's not happening right now in the present situation of everyday use. Okay, so when we look at once we kind of identify the main conflict, which is like if you were going back here in the story, is Luke having the lightsaber duel with Darth Vader, or is he fighting the snowstorm, which is the main conflict happening in this short story? Um, right? So once you identify that, then you break it down and say, okay, what are those background things? What's that? What led up to this? And so, Mama, as the narrator, does a great job of giving you that history. That's what the author, um, Alice Walker, that's the tool she uses to let you in on what's all this that happened in the past. That lays the groundwork for the conflict that occurs. But everybody's trying to get along. You've been in those family situations where everybody's trying to, maybe it's Thanksgiving or a holiday or a funeral or something. Everybody's trying to avoid conflict, but there's a lot of water under the bridge. There's definitely issues. Everybody's trying to be nice at this event, but then somebody does or says something, and boom, it all flares up. Well, that's what we're looking for in this inciting force, is what kind of flared up the conflict. There was stuff that led to it. What kicked it off? Who did what? Who said what? Right? And then you kind of like, all right, now who have we identified as the protagonist, and who are they in a fight with, and what is it they are they fighting about? Now, I don't want to do any plot spoilers. There's a surface item that they are going to fight over, okay? That's really key, but it's also going to represent some ideas and values that are even bigger than the actual house item, okay? But they are initially identify the item in the plot and then think through what it stands for. As we look at it deeper, like, well, why is this such a big deal? Like, um, it's bigger than just saying I'm fighting over a blanket, for my sister, um, because I'm cold, right? Or just because we're being scrappy. This has more significance. So why is this so important that Alice Walker would write a whole story about it and make it mean something to more than just, the people in the story? And kind of what kind of brings it to the crisis is what kind of intensifies it and makes it actually significant. Um, these things may happen or may not. Sometimes there are turning points. Sometimes it seems like it was going to resolve or change directions, and then it doesn't. Like this story, not so much a turning point. You will have other stories where there are turning points where it looks like, oh, it's going to go this other way. That's also usually in longer stories where they have time to play out a little bit more. This one is, our short stories may not have all that complexity, but the moment where they face off and one's going to win and one's going to lose, that is what we call the climax. And then then the denouement or the resolution is, well, what next? What happens after that? So those are the things that you are looking for and will make up the content in the paragraph, body paragraph one of your essay. And so in your outline, you're just taking these terms and telling me some of the things that you have located and identified in there. And hopefully, as you think about it some more and engage in this discussion and watch these, you'll get some more ideas. Why is it so important? Because it's key to the theme. Theme is the main idea. What are we supposed to be getting out of this? What's the purpose of of this story, it's not just to entertain us. Literature has meanings that go beyond that and are help us to learn something. And so you have to know the conflict first. All right, we'll stop right there.